Hello, testing. Can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, please type into the chat and just let me know that you guys can hear me. Yes. Sweet, 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 sweet. All right, looks like a bunch of people are coming in right now. We're going to start in about 4 to 5 minutes. So, in between that time, I'm going to play a little motivational video. All right. Enjoy this production by Medspiration Studios. We'll start in about 4 minutes, just waiting for everybody else to get up in here.
So I challenge you all just to take 1 minute every morning and either read it on a post-it on your refrigerator or recite it to yourself in the mirror, just to remind yourself what is your purpose for waking up every day and dedicating all of your time and energy towards mastering this profession. And that purpose is going to be your centerpiece of how you make decisions probably for the rest of your life. What I hope that purpose is to become a great physician that's abundant in knowledge and compassionate towards your patients. And by doing so, you'll reap the benefits of furthering your career by improving the quality of life of others. And that's really what medicine is all about.
A scalpel in the hands of an individual, it can do unbelievable damage. In the hands of a professional, the doctor, it saves lives. It's the same thing with failure. It's how you use it. It's that drive inside of you. The dark side is filled with failure, but it's the fuel that burns you like something that's never burned inside you before.
And it's extremely important to keep the same mentality that I mentioned in my step 1 video, is to prioritize every day of your life, making those sacrifices and trying to tell yourself, what am I going to do today to further my goal? Are you motivated and dedicated enough to just kill this exam?
All right. Hope that motivated everybody out there. Okay, so for everybody that's in here right now, if you guys can make your way to the polls, so you will see up in the chat, there's chat, questions, poll, and people up on the right side. If you can make your way to the polls and answer the polls, I see some of you guys already begin doing that. Just answer all those polls so I can see where everybody's at, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you. For anybody new that's just joining, please make your way to the polls. And I think I have about 10 questions in there that I want each of you guys to answer. So please make your way to the polls and answer the poll questions. And once those are all answered, we'll begin. Only see 3 questions. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because only 3 questions are being answered. Yeah, let me see how I can get the other ones to get published. Okay, I am now publishing the other polls. Thank you for letting me know that. Publish polls. All right, so for all the new people that have just entered, please go to the polls section and answer the polls. For the ones who were answering, I'm publishing a few other polls. Please answer all of them, and once you have, we'll go from there. They're starting to pop up. Thank you, Anjali and Jocelyn, for helping out. Seeing a lot of you starting to answer the questions. That's great. Just one last time for everybody out there, please head to the polls and begin answering the polls. Once we have the majority of people in here who've answered the polls, we'll begin. All right, looks like we have maybe 5 or 6 more people who need to head over to the polls and answer the questions. Once those 5 or 6 people answer the questions, I'll go over those and we'll begin. All right. Looks like majority of you guys have basically answered the polls. If you haven't, please make your way to that. We are going to get started now. So, hello everyone. I am Dr. Nav Badesha. I'm a graduate from CMU, and I started my journey on the island many years ago. And I'll be starting residency next week at Southern Illinois University School of Medicine. So, for everyone out there, I'm well aware of that black hole that many students fall into between the transition from MD4 to MD6. And that's when we transition from the island to the States. We start our review programs and begin studying for the NBME in step 1 to eventually begin our core rotations. And because I was one of those people who was given little to no guidance, I remember having lost all hope at one point. And I know many of you guys who are in here, you might feel similar to that. And I want to start by saying that I was once in your position. And with the proper work ethic and dedication, it's 1,000,000% possible to get over 10 residency interviews and to match into a university program. Um, so why are we here today? I'm officially the new academic advisor for CMU. And in this role, my biggest goal is to be able to help you guys achieve all the goals that you're setting out to achieve, especially and specifically passing your NBME for your medical school and passing step 1, doing well on it so you could go into those cores and rock it. So with that said, I'm going to start going over the polls just so we can familiarize with everybody who's here. And then we'll start a Q&A session and I'll answer any questions for any of you guys. Okay, so first question was, how many times have you hit Pathoma? Looks like many of you have hit it 1 to 2 times. What's the fastest you've ever cycled through all the material? Looks like majority of you guys have cycled through it in about 3 months. Some of you guys have gotten in there 1 month, few of you 2 weeks. That's good. Eventually, our goal is to get it down to that less than 7 days. I know that takes time, but you'll get to that point if you follow the process that I'm going to be discussing today. What's the highest NBME score you've received online or at the Prometrics? Many of you are in the 100 to 150 range, which, if you were here for the last webinar, I'll let you guys know I was in that 100 to 150 range at 1.2. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about. We all have been there, and it's all about improving, and putting in the work every single day. So I see majority of you guys are in that 170 to 190 range. That's a decent range to be in. That's also where a lot of people plateau, because there is another level where you have to start cycling all the material, and we'll get into that a little bit later, to be able to get over that curve, because that's where it gets really tough to get over. And it looks like a few of you guys are in that 191 to 200 range, and 3 of you are in that 200 plus range, which is excellent. How long have you been studying for USMLE Step 1? Only count the time after your MD4 semester. For CMU students, that's the time on the island. So we have 1 to 6 months. We have some people 7 to a year. A lot of you guys have been up in it for about a year and a half. Majority of you guys have been almost 2 years. And, for everybody out there, it took me about 2 years to study for step one. And, it was a grueling process, and it could take a lot less time if you know what you're doing. And that's kind of why I became the academic advisor for CMU is I realized a lot of people, there were the outliers who took it within like 3 months. And I was like, damn, how did they do that? Because for me, I thought I was doing enough. And every time I thought I was doing enough, I'd get my ass kicked by an NBME and I'd be depressed. And I think I wasn't going to do anything with my life. And then I just have to push myself to go harder and harder. And I didn't have anybody guiding me, telling me this is not enough, change this, add this, and do this, So that's kind of where I'm going to be able to speed that time up for you guys. But for those of you, I see some of you have been here for 25 to 48 months, so I've helped a few students who I believe study for 5 to 6 years for this exam. And, when you're an international medical grad who doesn't have any guidance, it could get so frustrating. And I just want to acknowledge you out there. If you've spent more than 4 years studying for the test, that I've had students who've studied that long who, when they follow the proper protocol, they do pass it. And, I want to acknowledge you for sticking by the principles of, stay there up until you can get past it, because it's a process, right? So a lot of this, it gets nerve-wracking when you think a lot about it, but when you start focusing in on one day at a time and you just trust the process, I promise at the end of this webinar, you will feel like it's going to be possible for you. And, if you follow what I tell you, I promise you will pass the exam. So just hang in there and keep working hard, okay? And have you taken the USMLE step one before? We have, majority of you have not. One of you has. And, I said this at the last webinar too. I know many people who actually failed step one who actually matched at competitive programs. And I think it's important to get that message out there because, yes, the USMLEs are very important, and scoring the best that you can is very, very important, but also being a good human being and being someone who is actually in the field because you want to help people makes a difference once you start doing residency interviews, right? And I personally had 10 residency interviews, and I realized once I got in the door and I was doing these interviews, none of them asked me about my scores. They just wanted to know what kind of person I was and if I looked like I was a good fit for the program. So yeah, even if you have failed step one, I wouldn't worry about it. I would focus on day by day improving and scoring very well on step one and step two CK. And how many NBME attempts at the Prometric Center have you had? I'm looking at majority of you guys have done it more than 4 times. I myself took the NBME 4 times before I passed it during my 5th go. And that was frustrating. I just for those of you who maybe I see 5 of you said you haven't even taken an NBME, I want you to get used to failing. Okay, this isn't like college where, if you study hard, you'll do well. This is kind of a trial and error thing where you could study hard and you're going to fail, but you have to know what your weaknesses are and you have to focus on those weaknesses and improve on them. So, it's a process. And again, the more comfortable you get with actually failing but failing forward, it's very, very important to not get discouraged. Every single person I know who's actually a resident now, they got used to failing these exams and they got used to, and the practice exams, the NBMEs are there. So if you fail them, you can learn about your weaknesses and approach it accordingly, right? So definitely don't get discouraged if you failed your NBME. Many times I've helped some students who, I think one student I helped had taken their NBME over 17 times, right? And failed it 17 times. And that student passed step one. So, just that should put some things into perspective for you guys. And I hope that gives you a little bit of hope that if you stay persistent, you're going to get there, okay? How many times have you done UWorld? This is big. This is a gold standard for studying. I know since I've been helping a lot of our students, some of the students out there aren't even doing the UWorld QBank. which is like gut wrenching. Every U.S. medical student is doing the UWorld Q Bank. We just got back from Harvard not too long ago, my wife and I, and the medical students at Harvard, some of them don't even attend their classes because they're like, I'm just going to hit a block of UWorld, and that's just seeing that from the perspective of an IMG who might be from India, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, or any country or the Caribbean. It's pretty interesting. You can get the UOQ Bank and you be studying the same way that these US med students are studying. So again, it's very, very important. I had Hussein Sattar, who's the creator of Pathoma, in my Kaplan course, and he actually said that his students, on average, they do UWorld 3 times. 3 times. And I see many of you have not done it once. Some of you are about halfway through. Majority of you guys have done it once. There is a majority of you who have done it twice, and a few of you who've done it 3 times, which is excellent. I myself, on my 3rd run, I think I almost got through it all the way again. And by that point, I was getting like 90s on UWorlds. And again, for those of you who have never done UWorld and you're just starting it, it's very common to get like 30%, 40%, 50%. You're not supposed to let that discourage you. If you study properly, you'll start grasping the material, and then by the 2nd go, you'll be improved. And by the 3rd time, whether it's from knowing the concept or memorizing the question, you're going to start getting the questions right? So did you attend the last webinar? Okay, cool. So it looks like about half of you did attend the last webinar. So some of this might be a little repetitive. So I want to make sure we set the tone before we get into the Q&A session. So hope you guys brought some new questions, and I hope for those of you who did attend, that you started adding the things that I was talking about, and I hope to see that you guys have improved a little bit. I wish to pass step 1. A few of you less than a month, a few of you 2 months, some of you 3 months, 4 months. Some of you are just getting started. Yeah. And, no matter where you're at, the process is going to be about the same. It's just different aspects of the process, whether you're beginning, middle, or getting close to taking it. And I see majority of you are CMU students. For those of you who are, I'm your academic advisor. For those of you who aren't, I kind of just offered this to students who aren't CMU students because I want to be able to help anybody out there. Having not been helped at one point, I know how much it can mean. So hope you find it useful. And for our CMU students, if you can make your way to the chat, I'm going to give you my email. Okay, so I just messaged my email, and this is for CMU students only. You can message me on there. I'm about to start residency next week on Tuesday, so I might take a few hours or a day or so to get back to you on email, but eventually it's been pretty simple. I'm going to be doing these webinars every month for you guys, once a month, and then I'll be getting back to every email that I receive, giving you information through there. And then a few of you who have very, very specific questions, I'll actually call you. I'll reach out. We'll have a one-on-one conversation. We'll develop a schedule. For any CMU student out there, I will help you develop a schedule. I will open up a space where I'll tell you what to do. If you're willing to listen, you're going to pass the exam. I've helped over hundreds of students pass the exam. I've passed them myself. So, it's a great opportunity for anybody out there, right? And with that said, definitely send me an email anytime. Let's go ahead and open this up to Q&A. If you guys can make your way to the questions section, type in any question that you have for me. And for those of you who may not submit a question, keep your eyes on the questions that are submitted. Whichever questions that are submitted, if you like that question or if you want that question answered, vote it up. And whichever ones get voted up the highest, I'll answer first. So I'll give you guys a few minutes just to get over there to the questions and start submitting questions. I will be answering any and all questions related to step 1, the NBMEs, CMU, and, on the surface, other questions if you have about residency or my experiences and stuff like that. So again, for all of you in here, please make your way to the questions and submit some questions. And I'll give you guys a few minutes to be able to do that. We're having a few questions being submitted. Oh, excellent. Now they're just flying in. For all of you guys who aren't there, please go to the questions section. Submit a question. If you don't feel like submitting a question, vote other people's questions up. And as it populates, I'll begin answering the questions that are the most popular or the ones that have been voted up. Looks like a lot are being submitted. So I'm just going to get started. Keep submitting them. Keep voting them up. Looks like we have about 40 minutes. So I'm here for the next 40 minutes. I'm all ears, and I'll answer any questions to the best of my ability. Okay. Somebody just commented in the chat. How does the process? Oh, Idis Solace, thank you for your question. Not in the chat though. Please go to the questions section, click on that, and then submit your question through the questions section, and I'll answer your question. Okay, thank you. All right. Oh, there's one that's been voted up 13 times. I'll answer that first. All right. I struggle with procrastination a lot. What did you do to tackle this during the board grind? You know, procrastination is a human condition, right? So everybody procrastinates to a certain degree. Again, a consistent routine is the best answer to that. So obviously, when I first got started, I was procrastinating too. Like for me, even if I could focus for like 2-3 hours in a day, that was an accomplishment for me, right? So again, I started small, but eventually, 2 to 3 hours would turn into 4 to 5 hours, which would turn into 5 to 6 hours. And yeah, in between that time, every hour I was taking a break, but eventually for any of you who are actually trying to pass this exam and you're serious about it, if you're not studying, I mean, dude, honestly, even 8 hours isn't like enough, like you have to get near that 10-hour mark of focused studying time every day to be able to actually make something happen, right? And for me, procrastination, one of the best ways to tackle that, early mornings. Like I got myself in the habit of waking up at 4 o'clock. I know a lot of you guys aren't going to want to wake up at 4 o'clock, but the reason I do that is I attack the things that I don't want to do first. So, for example, say I get up 4 o'clock, I wash up, I always meditate. After I meditate, I get my coffee ready, and then I'm looking at, okay, what do I have to do today? And what are the things I don't want to do? So literally, I'm going to attack the things I don't want to do first. And then I'm going to move and let the day kind of go from there, because that really allows me to dictate the day in a way that makes me attack all the things I wouldn't, right? So definitely when it comes to USMLE, NBMEs, if by 8 a.m. at the latest, you're not down in front of your desk or in the library, you haven't started doing a URL block, or you haven't started doing your reading for that day, then, one of the best ways to tackle your procrastination is to have a set time every day to start. Now, for USMLE Step 1, I took my USMLE Step 1 at 8 a.m., right? Because I took it at 8 a.m. and I knew I was going to take it at 8 a.m. I took my NBME at 8 a.m. as well. I knew every single day, 7 days a week, my studying time begins at 8 a.m. So, once I got into the habit of doing that, it might take you 7 days, a week of consistency. But at one point, when you have that consistent routine, 8 a.m., no matter what, I'm starting studying, once you get into that flow, then it really gets into, still doing things that are fun. I had this rule that I tell all my students, 8, 8, 8. So 8, 16, there's 24 hours in a day, right? 8 of those hours should be sleeping, because sleeping is a part of studying. That's how your brain processes memories and can turn them into long-term memories. So a lot of you guys who are studying, make sure you're getting enough sleep. It's actually better to get enough sleep and study than to be sleep deprived and study more. So 8 of those hours go into that, right? 8 hours should be towards studying. Another 8 could be towards something fun. Like for me, I was building our organization Medspiration while I was going through med school. So I'm big on not hearing any excuses. If I could build an organization from scratch and we reach over 1 million people a week, and I was doing the boards and I was doing my training, you don't have an excuse. You know what I'm saying? So, and whether you just want to Netflix and chill, or, you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, I hear a lot of people do that nowadays, or I don't know, play video games, take time for yourself, play sports, work out, whatever it is, but 8, 8, 8. 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of whatever you like to do, 8 hours of studying, right? That'll help with procrastination when in that day you're going to do something that you like. Okay. I hope that answers your question. If you wanted more, just submit another question and we'll go from there. All right. So let's see what has been voted up. A few of them have been voted up 7 times. Oh, one's been voted up 9. Let's do that one. And this is Gabrielle Botana. Sometimes I feel like the NBME questions are more complicated than USMLE questions. What is your opinion? You know, I would ask if you're doing UWorld. I know UWorld and NBME questions are different. And if it makes you feel more comfortable, UWorld questions, that's how USMLE step 1 is like UWorld questions. It's actually not like NBME questions. Sometimes NBME questions, there's like little wording and, you know, you're expected to know more, you know, versus UWorld, it kind of gives you an elaborate explanation and then it answers it. So, to a degree, I personally did find the NBME questions more complicated than like the UWorld questions and stuff. But, you know, after you get to a certain point, you look forward to getting challenging questions, right? If you're getting questions that are challenging you, it's going to be better for you, right? So one thing I noticed is, you know, at my time when I was studying, NBME 11, 13, 15, 16, 17, and 18 were available. 19 hadn't come out yet. I know you guys are in the 20s now. So, you know, those NBMEs, I struggled on those more than I did the UWorld assessments, right? And I did feel like those questions were more challenging, but they also forced me to go back and learn things from that perspective, which eventually on the actual exam, which was like UWorld, helped me, right? So, yeah, I felt the same. So I definitely feel you. And that is my opinion. And, you know, use it to your advantage. Because they are more challenging, there's probably more to learn, or if not an equal amount, but a different perspective to learn from. So you're not alone in that, okay? Thank you for your question. All right. What else we got? We got one that's been voted up 9 times. Cool. And for everybody here who's just getting here, let's see. Somebody said in the chat, I used to put my phone on social media away. Oh, cool. Malika. Dr. Malika said she used to put her phone and social media away for the whole day to avoid distractions. Yeah, like, whew, a lot of people I know just like got rid of their phone, you know, because for me, you know, I use social media a lot. And for those of you guys who don't follow Medspiration on Instagram. Follow me personally on Instagram, Medspired. Shameless promo. But yeah, definitely, you know, I would catch myself, you know, just grabbing my phone after one URL question and like going through Instagram, you know. So even I had to set a timer where I was like, dude, at least like for an hour, like I can't look at my phone, you know. So when I got into the habit of, if I won't look at my phone for an hour, I'll give myself 10 minutes, you know, and that would help me, you know. So if I'm studying 9 hours that day, I still looked at my phone 9 times, just once every hour for 10 minutes. And even that's like 90 minutes of looking at my phone, which it just goes to show how addicted we are to our phones. But yeah, so next question. Good. And for everybody in here, make your way to the questions, submit your questions. If you are reading other people's questions and that's the question you have voted up, the questions that are voted up the most are the questions I'm going to answer first. For example, Franca, your question's been voted up 9 times. I'm going to answer that question. So Franca, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Buonanno, beautiful name. Might have pronounced it wrong. I apologize. Question is, what should we do to get over a plateau? I feel like I've been getting the same UL score for about 4 months now. Whew, there it is. That's the ultimate question. For CMU students, many of us, many of you guys are stuck between 60 and 70, and you might spend a year in that 60 to 70 range, which is around that 190 range. But, you know, getting over that 200 hump and getting into that 70 plus range, 75 plus range, it takes another level of the process, right? So for many of you guys, if you're just starting up, again, you're going to have to just do UWorld, do it subject by subject until you get to this point. But once you get over that 60 point benchmark, you're in the 180s to about 200 range. How did I get over the plateau? So if you guys watched the video at the beginning, that was Dr. Alex Alsati. He's a current resident at Arizona State University. He was one of my colleagues and one of my best friends. Going through, we studied a lot together. He scored a 254 on step 1 and step 2 CK. He taught at Kaplan. So, me being his homie, I studied with him a lot, and I actually learned a lot from him, and I integrated his approach because it was better than mine, right? And what he started doing was what US Med students do around this plateau phase, right? And that's to begin cycling the material. So I'm going to give you an example of how I cycled the material. I've said this many times, so for some of you guys, this is redundant, but at one point, if you do it for 6-7 straight weeks, you're going to pass the exam, right? So once I had done UWorld about 1.5-2 times, and I was in that 180 to 200 mark, what I started doing is I would use Pathoma as one of my main guiding resources along with my first aid, right? And Pathoma, I believe, has 19 chapters, right? So what you're going to start doing when you're in that 180 range and you're in that plateau, you're going to want to hit all of Pathoma and the whole first aid while doing like a block or two in a week, in 7 days. And then you're going to take an NBME. And again, after you take that NBME, in the next 7 days, you're going to go through all of Pathoma, all of UWorld, and do at least 1 to 2 blocks a day, again, until you take another NBME. You're going to watch it rise because you're covering all the material. And you're going to do this up until either your next NBME. So, for example, right now, today is June 22nd, right? Say my Prometrics NBME is on July 15th, which is a Monday, right? I have June 24th, which is a Monday, July 1st, and July 8th. Those are 3 Mondays that I have before I take my exam on July 15th, right? Every Monday, since my NBME exam is going to be on July 15th, 8 a.m., every Monday before that day, which is 3 Mondays, I'm going to take an NBME or a UWorld assessment at 8 a.m. So I'm really getting my circadian rhythm and my sleep cycles and my whole entire life based around that time when I'm going to take that NBME. And literally, so today's Saturday, on Monday, I'm going to take that NBME. I'm going to get my result on that NBME. It's going to show me what subjects I'm weak in. And literally that day, I'm going to go over that entire NBME if I can. And if not, take another, within 24 hours, you should be going over that NBME, knowing what your weaknesses are. Once you know your weaknesses, you're still going to go through all 19 chapters of Pathoma, but start with your weaknesses. So how do you do 19 chapters in 6 to 7 days? You have to do 3 to 4 chapters every single day. This is no light task. It requires 10 to 12 hours every day, no matter who you are. So for me, for example, I get started by like 6 or 7 a.m. I'll do my block, mixed block, timed, get it done, go over it. And then right after that, I'd have my Pathoma open with the Pathoma videos and say on this day, I'm going to do cardio, endocrine, and renal, right? So I'm going to do cardio, endocrine, and renal. And the way that I would do that is I'd have the videos of Pathoma on, and I'd do them fast. At one point, I had done Pathoma so many times, I could do them at 2.0 speed. So cardio would only take me 45 minutes, right? I'd have my first aid open, and I'd have the videos and the Pathoma and first aid open, right? Literally, I'd take those 45 minutes to go through all of cardio, read all of Pathoma along with it, but also hit the physio and the cardio path in the first aid. So basically, say I did all of cardio, Pathoma, took 45 minutes. I also did majority of physiology and pathology in the first aid. Now, before I move on to endocrine, I'm going to read the embryo and the anatomy, finish the physio that I didn't. I will have hit all the path, and I'm going to hit the farm. Make sure you look at the charts, memorize the charts, draw out the charts. So basically what I did there in those 45 minutes is I did all of Pathoma, read the Pathoma book, and I also did the embryo, anatomy, physio, path, and farm in the first aid, along with any notes that I've annotated from any previous exams or the UWorld or UWorld itself, right? I could literally do that within an hour at one point. So now I've done all of cardio, done all the first aid, all of Pathoma, move on. Just let go with love, move on to endocrine. I would do the same thing with endocrine. It would take me maybe an hour to go through all the Pathoma videos. Once I've done that, I'm also reading along with Pathoma, and I'm reading along with the first aid. I will have hit physiology and pathology of endocrine. right when I've done that, I'm going to read the embryo, the anatomy, finish the physio that I didn't do, and then hit the farm, memorize the charts. That might take another hour, hour and a half, right? And then I move on to renal. Again, same thing, right? I'm hitting 3 chapters after I hit that block. Usually after I do that, that might take me 4 to 5 hours. I'm going to hit another block, go over that block. By that point, I'm hitting like 8, 9 hours where I've done 2 blocks. I've done 3 chapters, right? And now whatever else that you want to supplement in there, I know a lot of people do Anki decks. I would take pictures of my UWorld charts. I'd go over my UWorld charts, but literally that's it. I wouldn't do more than that. So, once I've gone over my NBME, I'm going to make sure I go through all 19 chapters of Pathoma and the entire first aid within about 6 days. So, say it's Sunday the next week. So after I took my NBME, in those 6 days, I did all 19 chapters of Pathoma, the entire first aid, and about 2 blocks every day. So then before that Monday comes, before my second NBME, which would be on like July 1st, I'm going to make sure that I skim read micro, farm, and biochem. Those are the memorization sections. So 24 hours before my exam on July 1st, which I'm going to buy online, I'm going to do that, right? I'm going to make sure I read the memorization sections because that rapid recall, it comes and goes. You know what I'm saying? And literally after I've read micro, biochem, and farm, come 8 a.m. on Monday morning, maybe hit the rapid review in the first aid just to keep things fresh, and then boom, do the exam. Find out what my score is, know what my weaknesses are, go over that NBME or UWorld assessment, back at it. 19 chapters, hit the entire first aid, 2 blocks every day, 24 hours before July 8th, which is the next following Monday. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to read micro, farm, and biochem. And once I've read it, do the rapid review of the first aid, then boom, July 8th, my score has already risen 20 points, right? Now my NBME at the Prometrics is 7 days away. What am I going to do? Don't change it. Do the same thing again. Do all 19 chapters, do the entire first aid, do 2 blocks a day, 24 hours before, micro, biochem, farm. Literally, this is a process. This is what US med students do for about 6 weeks, right? So, by the time I've done that and I'm rereading micro, biochem, and farm for like the 3rd time, I could read much faster because I've already done this, and it's repetition, but this is where you take your recall and you get way over that plateau, right? So basically, then I go to my NBME, guess what? I crushed it. I was getting 60s, 69. Now I'm at like a 79 because I just cycled the shit out of everything, and this is where work ethic starts eliminating fear. Your anxiety starts going away. You're like, yo, I'm locked in. I do everything every day. I'm going to get to a point where it's a matter of time before I just completely obliterate this exam, right? You pass your NBME. Within about 2 weeks, you could sit your exam. So again, if you have 2 to 3 weeks after you pass your NBME, you book your date. Say you booked it on a Monday. Now, July 22nd, July 29th, and August 5th, if my exam falls on the following week, I'm going to do NBMEs. Again, same thing. Literally, if you do this for at least 6 weeks, up to 8 weeks, where you're just cycling through all the material every week, I promise. Like I've had students who weren't the brightest students in the world, and they don't need to be. If they bring the work ethic, trust the process, and they do this, they're going to pass, right? So that's how you get over the plateau. I tried to explain that to the best of my abilities. You guys will hear me constantly say that because the thing for me that was the hardest was not just doing UWorld, doing Pathoma, reading the first aid. It was, what I was doing is I'd take my NBME and then I have like about 4 weeks until my next NBME because I'd book it right away. And I'd only go through the material one time. I would only go through the whole first aid one time. I'd do like a block a day. And, I'd do Pathoma like once, And I was like, dude, I'm doing a lot, like within that month, I cycled through all the material. That should be enough. No. When I started cycling 4 times in that month, that's when it changed. That's when everything started clicking. That's when that's when I got over the plateau. It's literally the amount of work you put in. It's not magic. There's no chance. There's no luck. It's the work ethic and how dedicated you are. I hope that answered your question. I'm sure it did. All right. Good, guys. We got a lot of questions that have been submitted, so I'm just going to keep going. We got somebody in the chats. Can you repeat that, please, from the first 7 days? Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, I did. I repeated it a few times. So Okay, questions. What's been voted up the most? Okay, I see Samit, your question's been voted up 11 times, so I'm going to go ahead and answer that. Franca, yeah, you're welcome. You're awesome. All right, Samit, Bosi, sorry if I said your name wrong. What's your recommendation for annotations when completing UWorld? Time, how to do them? Great question. Again, like my first time doing UWorld, I didn't know anything. And for those of you guys who are in here, if you don't have a UWorld subscription, drop any cube. I don't care what cube bank you're doing. You drop it. You're doing what they do in Harvard. You're getting a UWorld cube bank, and that's what you're doing, right? So the first time I was doing it subject by subject. Literally, I pick up cardio. Cardio has like 320 questions, so I hit everything in cardio. So, all things in cardio, which included embryo anatomy, physio, path, farm, and all those extra things that they have on UWorld. But I'd hit all the cardio. I'd pick the 40, and I was actually doing the first time I went through UWorld, it wasn't timed. I did the tutor mode, right? But I was trying to do 40 questions every day, just tutor mode, and it would take me about 6 hours to go over one block. After I do those 40 questions, while I'll be doing them because it was tutor mode, I'd make sure that I would know the question inside out. So if I'm doing one question, and say it's on cardiomyopathies, and the answer is something about hypertrophic cardiomyopathies, I'm going to not just know that question and the answer, I'm going to know why the incorrects are wrong. And the incorrects are going to have all the other cardiomyopathies, right? There's going to be whether it's concentric versus hypertrophic, or there's going to be dilated versus the other one, so there's so many, and the restrictive cardiomyopathy and stuff like that, right? So all the answers, I'd make sure I knew all the incorrect answers just as much as I knew the correct answers, right? And how I would annotate those, by the time I got to step 2 CK, I literally had a blank sheet of paper. I'd write the QID down, and I'd write like the exact concepts that I didn't know. That was the best way to annotate it. The first time I did it, I would write them directly in my first aid. So if we're doing something on hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, I'd go in that page in cardio in the first aid, and I'd literally, under the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, I would write down, if it's not already written there, what UWorld was teaching me. I'd have the QID there. I'd write it. So then I could always go search that question on UWorld if I ever needed to brush up on anything. And I'd make sure anything that was missing, I'd add. And by the end of it, you realize there's like 5 different questions on the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And I wrote all 5 concepts from UWorld into my first aids. And then when I'm going through my first aid, when I'm getting to that cycle phase, I'm not just reading hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and what's in the first aid. I'm also reading those 5 questions that UWorld had. And, in addition, when you get through all the NBMEs, you're writing those in there, and you're, so you might have a lot of writing in your first aid at one point. I actually went through 3 first aids. My first one that was on the island, I threw it away. They didn't prepare us on the island, which I'm sure many of you, if I actually asked that in a poll, did the island prepare you? You're gonna say no. And don't worry, that's kind of how it was. But then at the same time, once I got off the island and I did Kaplan and I got into my own routine, I made sure I was prepared, and yeah, so that was one thing. I would annotate straight into the first aid. By my second first aid, I wrote a lot from UWorld, so I'd write down the question and like more than I needed. It wasn't until I got to my third first aid where like I understood and had a foundation. So literally by that point, I would write like 5 words, and I know exactly what I was talking about. Because then at this point, I had started reaching a level of mastery where now under hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, I'll literally just have a few words per question, and I'd just highlight the parts that were reiterated in questions, right? So I really did use UWorld, the first aid and my annotations interchangeably. I put them directly into the first aid. Alex Alsadi got a 254. He had his own notes on blank sheet of paper. That's what I did on Step 2 CK. I scored considerably higher. I scored 20 points higher on Step 2 CK than I did Step 1. And that was because I was literally writing my notes on a scratch piece of paper, right? But however you do it, you have to annotate every question, and you have to annotate whatever you don't understand. You have to constantly go over what you don't understand. Once you do that, you'll realize, it does make a big difference. So I hope that answers your question. That was what's your recommendation for annotations and completing UWorld? Time. Yeah. So it would take 6 hours initially to do a block. First time doing it subject based, and I did it in tutor mode. It took forever. It was 6 hours a day. It took many months, if I'm not mistaken, right? But then the second time when I got through UWorld and I had annotated my notes already, then it got faster because now I was doing timed mixed blocks and 40 questions, and that would only take 1 hour. And then when I was going over the questions, I had already done them once and I had notes on them. So then I go back to those notes and if I needed to add something, I'd add something, but majority of the time I'm just reviewing and simplifying the notes from before. It's like, oh, you didn't get this, but now what was once 10 words takes like 2 words now because I get it, So by the second time when I was doing time mixed blocks, it was actually, I was simplifying everything and I was getting more into the routine of doing blocks on blocks because, step one is it's 8 hours. It's 7 blocks. So if you can't sit there for 8 hours and do 7 blocks, you're not going to take the exam, right? So you got to get into that habit. So I hope that answers the question. And if it didn't, just continue and submit another question, right? All right. Wow. There are so many questions submitted. Good, man. I like it. Keep them coming. Siri has 12 votes up. So I'm thinking I'm going to go with that one. Yeah, we're going to go with that one. Okay. So Mr. Siri Yarlagata. So sorry I'm saying all these names probably really wrong. But Siri, your question is, sometimes I feel like I've seen some random questions on the CBSE exam I have taken at the Prometric Center that I haven't seen in the First Aid or UWorld. How can you study that extra material and increase your scores when they ask you random stuff that you have never encountered? Great question. You're never gonna know it all. That's the answer, and it's frustrating because once you get to a point where you're like, I've mastered like everything. I'm reviewing. I'm cycling the material in 7 days, and I've mastered my first aid. I've mastered Pathoma. I've done UWorld 3-4 times. I've mastered that. Bring on anything. I should know everything. You realize, even in that UWorld block, when you do it, you get 90%. There's like 1 or 2 things that you thought you'd never seen before. It's still in the first aid, And yeah, when you actually take the CBSE exam at the Prometric Center, or when you take step 1, no matter how much you study every book and every resource, there's going to be questions you don't know. And it's important to know that. So the way step 1 works for all the students that I've helped pass, and including myself, was 50% of the step 1 questions are gimmies. If you've done UWorld 2 to 3 times, if you've mastered and cycled Pathoma in the first aid, like I said, 6 weeks leading up to the exam, you cycled everything 6-7 times. Then from that space, when you sit the exam, 50% of the questions are questions you saw, either in UWorld, in NBME. It don't even matter where you saw them because you know them, So after those 50% that are gimmies that everybody gets right, that you have to get right, because you get those wrong, you're falling off below the curve. Then you have another 50% of the exam left, right? 25% of those questions are challenging. They're going to make you think. You may not have seen them in that exact form before, but you know the concept. And if you really cycled through everything, you will know it, or you'll come to it, right? So now we're looking at about 75% of the exam where, yeah, you feel pretty good about. Out of 3 out of those 4, you're going to get right. 1 out of those 4 was really challenging, but you found your way to it. Again, but 1 out of those 4, the other 25%, you're like, dude, I studied everything, and this is a hard question, and I don't know the answer. Well, remember that step 1, I think they put 12 to 15 questions in there that aren't even going to count towards your score. They throw those questions out, and they're really just to test you for some weird thing, right? So some of those questions that are super challenging don't even count towards your actual score. They're just there to try and throw you off, right? So again, it was extremely humbling to realize even the friends that I know got 260s, there was things that they didn't know on the actual test. So you'll never know it all. Just try to your best ability just to master what's in UWorld, what's in Pathoma, what's in the first aid, cycle that. And you should know 75% of everything that's on step 1. And then the rest, is just small details. So let's see if I answered that whole question. Sometimes you feel like you haven't seen them in first aid or UWorld. How can you study that extra material, increase the scores? Yeah, again, um, I would focus on mastering the first aid, UWorld, Pathoma, and, doing timed questions, every single day and getting into the routine of being able to hit 4 blocks like it's nothing, those type of things will help you with test taking strategies, but that's really, even people who get 260s, that's all they're doing, so beyond that, you may have an answer that I don't. So moving on. Great. Wow, we only have 10 minutes left. That's really sad. I'm gonna try and answer a few more questions, so we might go a little bit over time if that helps you guys a little bit more. Let's see. So Siri, thank you for your question. Somebody puts in the chat, thanks so much. So to summarize, to get over the plateau, you said 2 blocks a day, Pathoma and first aid for 3 chapters a day. Yeah. And microbiochem and farm on Sunday, right? Plus the weekly assessment. Excellent. It is solace. You summed it up very well. And for everybody out there, if you're in the chats, read that. If you could get into the routine of doing that every 7 days, it's a matter of time before you smash that exam, right? So everybody in here, it's a matter of time before you smash that exam based off of just that chat room comment. Summit, thank you. Siri, thank you. Yep, absolutely. All right, getting back to the questions. Olivia, yours has been voted up 12 times. And Olivia, that name's familiar. So I think we've spoken before, maybe a few times, and I appreciate you always chiming in and being interactive. So regarding students that have taken time off 2 to 3 years to study or for other reasons, have you seen these students match? Hell yeah. Again, I took 2 years. I took 2 years myself to be studying for step 1. I was also building Medspiration at the time. So, I made sure we did a clean water mission. We went to Africa to do that. So I really did fill in that gap space with something that was related to medicine. You know what I'm saying? And whether it's, and you could be creative with this, like put in your time. I know people who took 4 years off and studied, scored well. You're going to get interviews. Once you get interviews, they don't care about your USMLE as much as you thought. What they really care about once you're in that door is who you are and whether you can really add to the program, right? And don't lie. That's another thing. Don't ever lie. One of the things that helped me through my residency interviews was, I took 2 years off. And I made sure I made that a positive thing. I let them know, like, dude, honestly, and I didn't blame anybody. I didn't say my school didn't help me prepare. That's bullshit. Don't ever blame anybody but yourself. Own your shit. It's very, very important to own your own shit. Once you get to that point, it's more like, hey, I found it more challenging than I thought I would. And I put in my heart. That's why I'm sitting in front of you. Every time I failed and I realized I wasn't putting in enough, I put in more. And it might have taken longer than the person next to me, but you know what I can guarantee is that I'll never quit. I can guarantee that no matter what the obstacle is, I'm willing to look at myself. I'm willing to look at my weaknesses, and I'm willing to turn my weaknesses into strengths because I'm a student. Kobe Bryant, the great Kobe Bryant said this. And you see Michael Jordan back here. You see Kobe Bryant right there. So I'm a huge basketball fan. Kobe Bryant said the thing that great athletes and just great humans in general do is their ability to diagnose their own weaknesses, to assess them, and then to turn those into strengths by working on them is what makes a great athlete. But that's also what makes a student who turns into a great doctor, and a student who passes USMLE Step 1 with a great score is your ability to actually be like, yes, I have weaknesses. Yes, I have flaws. But every time I see one or anytime one's exposed, you're going to catch me studying about that and learning about that. And eventually I'm going to master it, right? So for anybody out there, don't worry about how long you're taking. Don't compare and compete with anybody else but yourself. One of the big things, Tom Brady said this, the greatest American football player of all time. Don't compete with anybody but yourself and who you were yesterday. I don't care if you're taking 4 years. What you need to worry about is where you're at right now and how you can improve on who you were yesterday. If you do that, you have tunnel vision. You don't give a shit about anybody or anybody else in the world. When you're studying for the USMLEs, you are in your own world. And the only other world than that is your world, right? So there's your world and you world, and they're really just one world. And you live in that. You don't care about what anything else is going on in the world, and all you're worried about is, I need to get better than yesterday. Literally, tunnel vision, focus on yourself. I don't care if it's family members, best friends. Don't let anybody distract you. You compete with yourself and who you were yesterday. And I don't care how long it takes. Once you pass that exam, be completely honest about the worst parts and make sure it's positive. You know, if at the end of the day, you know, you failed step one, but you know, you made sure that you passed and you're sitting in that interview, you just be honest at that point. Don't make anything up. Just be real, you know, because if you did pass that exam and you got to that point, there was something you did that kept you going. Whatever that something is, talk about it. Talk about what your unique experience was and how that makes you a great candidate. Just make it positive and you know, show why you stand out. That's it. So don't worry about how long you're taking. Definitely try to, you know, make it as fast as possible, but only by competing with yourself and who you were yesterday, not based off of what so-and-so is doing. Because once you start competing with other people, dude, you're going to start thinking you're better than other people, or you're going to start thinking you're less than. And again, whether you think you're better than someone, you're going to be arrogant. And whether you think you're below someone, you're going to be insecure. So it's never about competing with others. It's about where you were yesterday. So I know that'll help. Use that, please. Chats, thank you. That was exactly the guidance I needed. Yeah. Never make excuses. You world, one world. That's very true. Olivia, you're welcome. Mistakes can be positive only if you're willing to learn from them and apply them into your life. Gabrielle, that's what USMLE is actually looking at. You know, the students who I saw that actually struggled, who actually didn't end up going anywhere with it and quit, were the ones who weren't listening to me and weren't listening to what the books or UWorld was teaching them, but they thought they knew everything, right? The students who have a strong thought where they're like, I know more than everybody else, and I don't need to take anybody else's advice. I don't need to ask for help. I don't need to, you know, just humble yourself. And you know what? It's not my job to tell you to humble yourself, because these exams will humble you, right? A lot of you are here because you've been humbled by the NBMEs and USMLE Step 1 yourself. And again, let it humble you, because the greatest physicians I had the honor of training under, they were humble. They didn't act like they knew it all. They're willing to say, I don't know. They're willing to ask questions, and they're constantly remaining students. Welcome to medicine. You're always a student. Don't ever think you're better than anyone, because you're not. If you do, you're just arrogant. Nobody likes you, you know? So take that home, right? Cool. So, you know, we're reaching the end of this almost, but I'm going to answer a few more questions because I'm having a good time, right? And also, you know what? I'm going to put a last poll in there for everybody who's still in here. I just want to know if you guys found this useful, right? And so I'm just going to put in the poll. Did you find this webinar helpful? Question mark. Yes. No. All right. So while I answer more questions, oh damn, but you guys already started answering. Good. Please answer yes or no. So that kind of helps me gauge whether what I'm doing is actually beneficial. I'm going to be doing these webinars once a month, every month. So, you know, as I'm going through residency, you'll catch me doing a webinar with you guys, and you know, you're probably like, damn, this guy looks tired. Bear with me. You know, I'm taking this time out for you guys because it's beneficial for you guys. And, you know, I'm really interested in academia and teaching. So it's going to help me as well. So we're all helping one another as we go through it. Hello, what's up with step 1 now? They'll make it pass or fail. Keep the score count. Huda, they're going to keep scores. Trust me. With you have more international medical graduates taking this exam every day, you know, and yeah, making it pass fail for the US students would make sense, but because there's so many, there's like 18,000 IMGs who apply every year, you know, and like there's no other way. If you don't make it competitive and have scores, it just won't work. So if you're sitting there and banking on this being pass fail, so you put in less work, don't do that. You know, go in knowing and expecting that there's a score involved, and go in to try to get the best score possible. If it changes, it changes. If it doesn't, you scored the best you could, right? I keep it there. Are we still getting a UWorld 1-year subscription from CMU? Tanya, I've had people ask me that, and I tried to follow up with Radic about that, our CEO. I'll follow up again. Okay, so I know that it's gonna happen. I just don't know when, but I'm gonna follow up and definitely reach out to my email and I'll follow up with you about that. So I'm just gonna put this for all CMU students. That's my email, USMLE at cmumed.org. Email me anytime, and we'll go from there. But yeah, you should be getting your UWorld subscription from CMU soon. And okay, let me answer like a few more questions. Polls. Many of you guys said this. You did find this helpful. That's good. A few who didn't answer that. So please answer if you found this helpful. Go to the polls. Let me know. Gives me some positive reinforcement. Otherwise, let's answer more questions here. Where is the one? Oh, looks like, oh, Tanya. Yeah, well, I answered this question already now. Are we still getting a free 1-year subscription offered by CMU? Yes, CMU is going to get you a 1-year free subscription. I'm not sure when, but I will follow up. And just follow up with me through email. And if you do ask me that question, I'll make sure I reply and let you know. But I'll ask Radic and Dr. Jackson, and I'll get back to you on that. All right. And then what other questions we got? I think Samit looks like he was voted up 12 times. Olivia was voted up 11 times. Siri, I answered that one. Okay, so let's go to the 12. Oh, actually, Samit, I had already answered your question. Okay. Olivia. Oh, I had answered that too. Okay, so what do we really have left? A few questions that have been voted up twice. Hamani. I'll answer that one. So Himani is asking, how do you stay motivated and confident at hard times and make use most of the time? Yeah, like, again, I just talked to Tim Grover, who's like, he trained Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. He hates the word motivation because motivation is nice, but consistency is more important, right? So for me, there was hard times, there's good times, there's good days, there's bad days. I feel like shit, I feel great. Regardless of how I felt, every day I put in the same amount of work, never did too much or too little. I'm just consistent with how much I was doing. So again, it made me motivated that I was consistent. So knowing that every day, regardless of how I felt, I'd make sure that I was hitting those, especially when I'm cycling. Because when you get to a point where you're cycling, when I'm doing 2 blocks every day, I'm hitting 3 chapters every day, and I'm doing Anki deck cards, or I'm going through UWorld charts, and I'm putting 10 hours that day. I'm waking up, I'm doing the same thing. And then, on Sundays, I'm rereading Microbiochem and Farm. By Monday, when I'm taking this exam, who cares how I felt? Nobody cares. No, I can tell, like, I have people who I can speak with who, like, my wife or like my mom, who I could be like, yeah, I feel like shit. I've been working hella hard. I'll cry. Like, even I was crying through the process. So don't think there's no blood, sweat, and tears involved. This shit will break you down to the core, right? But at the end of the day, my consistency with just putting in the work and having a consistent routine and not doing too much or too little, but just, again, doing the same amount every day, that's what made me confident and motivated. Work ethic eliminates fear. Consistency eliminates fear. Making use of the time for studying, again, is starting early, and doing those things that I've mentioned, right? Whether you're just starting and you're doing, like, I just spoke with a student like last week, and we were talking about she was just getting started. So it was about, because you're just getting started, get your UWorld, get your Pathoma subscription, and subject by subject. Start with cardio, do 40 questions a day. That's it. That's consistency. You do that every day, you're already getting yourself into a routine. Once you've done that and you've done all the subjects, we'll go further, right? So no matter where you're at, whether you're at the beginning or you've done all the subject by subject one time already, and you're getting to a point now where, you're going through UWorld the second time, now your next step is actually do timed mixed blocks, right? So now you're going to step it up, maybe do 2 time mixed blocks every day and go back over everything, right? Once you've done that, now you're going to get closer to the cycling where you're going to do everything in 7 days, right? And, it's a process, and that's me explaining to you the beginning, the middle, and the end. And literally that is the process. You do that process, you pass. There's no, but Nav, my process is like this. No, if something that I'm saying isn't like involved in your process, at one point, humble yourself to just recognize that, I've helped hundreds of students pass. I've passed it myself. This is what's required. If it's more than what you expected, do more, and until you do, the exams are going to continue to humble you. It's not my job to tell you to do whatever. The exams will tell you exactly what you need to do. Right. So, Hamani, I would say consistency really helped with motivation. I'm 5 minutes over. I'm going to answer one more question because I'm really enjoying this. I'm having fun. Cool. So a lot of you guys who are here answered the poll. Did you find this webinar useful? 100% of you said you did find this useful. Again, there's a few more of you out there who may be listening that didn't answer that part. Please vote. Let me know if you found this webinar helpful. It does give me positive feedback. And as we start doing, we're going to keep doing these webinars once a month. All of you who join are going to realize, okay, this is redundant, but the redundancy is good because even studying is just redundant at one point, right? So definitely let me know through the polls if you found it useful. I see a lot of chat, so I'm going to read the chat. Huda, you're welcome. Malika, I'm never motivated 90% of the time I'm studying, just to study anyways. Boom. That's it literally is that. Franca says to Anjali, I know you said you did sketchy for micro. If you don't mind me giving my own experience, when I first did sketchy for micro, it didn't really work for me. But what I do now is every morning I start my day by watching an equivalent of 30 minutes of sketchy videos. By the end, you watched it so many times, you will know. Yeah. I mean, micro is memorization. However the hell you get to memorizing stuff is great. So yeah, that one, I know sketchy is great. Some students, I think UCSD started that, and it's been very successful. Definitely do that. For me, getting the gram positive chart in the first aid, getting the gram negative chart in the first aid, drawing that shit out until I could draw it in my sleep, that helped. And then just like literally reading through it. I had a great micro professor at CMU at the time, Dr. Uche. He really helped me with micro. So, however you memorize micro, it's memorization. At the end of the day, you're going to need to read the entire micro section in like 2 hours if you can, just by skim reading it. Know your gram positives, know your gram negatives, know the fungi, know the protozoans, and know the antibiotics, and just know the whole thing, and it's all repetition. So however you memorize, do it. Hamani, haha, right. We just got to hit at it. Yeah, exactly. Hashal Fahad, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. Dude, I did my first NBME, failed, did another one, 208, then did UWorld assessment 226. Any recommendations to keep it up? Hell yeah, what I told you. Cycle every 7 days, take another NBME, cycle every 7 days, do another UWorld assessment, book your NBME for the school. If you already passed that, book your exam date. Email me. If you're going to book your exam date, we'll make sure that we really customize it towards what you're doing and integrate that process into it. So Hashal Fahad, just email me. But again, the cycling, you got to do this 7 days. You got to cycle everything 7 days a week. However you're doing it, you have to do that. If you do that and then take an assessment every day on the day that you're going to take your exam, boom, next thing you know, you got 250, right? It is. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. I have a quick question. I just finished UWorld. All the tests were mixed questions. I was considering going over the whole bank again, like test by test, or should I do subject-based new subtraction and then mix? No. Once you've done subject by subject, now all you're going to do is mix time blocks. Don't go back subject by subject. You could do your reading, and you could do what I was saying, where you're cycling 7 times, like every 7 days. You could do when you do pathoma, cardio, and then you read the first aid, cardio, that's going to be your subject by subject. But because USMLE step 1 is mixed timed, you will not go back to subject. You will do mixed time no matter what, because that's what the exam is. That's it. So once you've done subject by subject once, the only other way you're going to do subject by subject after that is by going through pathoma and UWorld, and pathoma and the first aid, and you will do UWorld mixed blocks. That's it, right? And then thanks for everything. Thank you, Nav. Flashcards, do flashcards. That is just annotations, right? Like I did flashcards. I bought the farm flashcards. Do that. Do it. It doesn't hurt. Franca, thank you so much for the tip. I'll have to try that. I get so overwhelmed by the subjects, and it seems like doing this could lessen the anxiety. Yeah, definitely, Franca. Of course. What schedule do you recommend for those not in dedicated period of study? Yeah, again, same thing I just mentioned. Which, if you're just getting started, subject by subject, UWorld, annotate your notes, have your flashcards, do Pathoma. But you have to do subject by subject UWorld to start, right? And, once you've done that and you did all of UWorld subject by subject and you annotated notes and did your first aid and Pathoma, second time around, now you could do the mix blocks and start supplementing more stuff into that, right? So same process every time. All right. All right, guys, I'm 10 minutes over. I'm going to answer one more question, and then I'm going to head out. 32 of you out of 37 people who are still here voted that this was useful, so that's good. I'll continue doing these for that reason. Last question will be, which one? Well, this one's easy. Anjali, how many UO questions a day should we aim to complete? 40. When you're first starting, you're doing subject by subject. Even if you're doing subject by subject, if you're not doing it timed and you're just doing tutor mode, 40 questions should take you 6 hours, around that, right? So you have to do 40. If you're not doing 40 questions 7 days a week, you need to either question why you're in this or you need to do it, because that's it. That's all. I'm not going to say anymore. I'll answer another question. That one was really easy. What other questions are voted up? Summers. Your questions are voted up 3 times. So I'm going to answer that. Apart from a 7-day schedule we should eventually get to, can you touch on a schedule for those who are not in dedicated? How fast should you be cycling the material? Yeah. Definitely, like I was saying at the beginning, if you're just getting started, you have to do 40 questions a day. You have to annotate those notes into the first aid and do Pathoma. However you do that, it should take at least put in 8 to 10 hours and do that one. Eventually, you want to bump that up to 2 blocks a day. Now, once you could get to, initially, first time going through UWorld, it's going to be very hard for you to do something else. First time, if you're just getting started, if you're just doing like 1 block a day, putting in 6 hours where you're doing subject by subject, by the end of the day, you put in like 8 hours doing other, like taking notes and like reading and stuff like that. That's good. If you're really trying to get that 250 and you're just getting started, do 2 blocks. Even if it's tutor mode, subject by subject, 2 blocks. So if I'm doing cardio, do 2 blocks, 80 questions of cardio, and do it, whether you want to do those timed or whether you want to do them tutored, go through both. But that's how it's going to start. You're just going to be able to do that much, and that'll take you to 12 hours if you're doing 2 blocks, 10 hours minimum, right? Annotate your notes, make sure your notes are good. The day after that, before you start, read over the notes that you annotated every morning, right? Make sure you do that and go from there. Once you've done UWorld 1 time all the way through like that, now you're stepping it up to mixed time blocks. When you're getting into the mixed time blocks, this is where you could do 2 to 3 blocks every day, mixed time, go through your notes. Literally, you're doing the same thing again. And at this point, you should be doing 2 blocks a day, and you should be able to do all of UWorld in less than a month, in about a month. Because if you do 2 blocks a day of UWorld timed every day, I think it should take around 30 days to do, right? Once you've gotten cycled through it within 1 month, and you'll know that you're going to be in that 60, 70 mark if you've done that. After that, we're going to get into the cycling 7 days. So that's kind of on the surface how that process goes. And I've mentioned that multiple times in this. So I hope that kind of gets redundant and it makes sense. And if not, email me if you have specific questions. We could go into that. All right. Cool. All right, guys. I went 15 minutes over. So I think that was the last question. It looks like almost all of you guys actually voted that this was useful. Actually, there was no people that voted no. So I do appreciate that feedback. Once a month, you guys will get my email, and whenever I get time, I'll be hopping on here answering all those questions. Keep working. keep emailing me. I'll keep in touch with you guys. Work hard, guys. If you have questions, again, you have my email. Reach out to me and stay dedicated. I've been there. Just whatever you're doing, make sure you're competing with who you were yesterday and you're improving. Be the best version of yourself every day. Be the best freaking version of yourself every day. I don't care. There's no excuses. If you're not aiming to be the best version of yourself, why do you want to be a doctor? Like, doctors set the standard for humans, we should. At least you should want to set the standard for humans. And if you're not aiming to be the best version of yourself at this point, question why you're doing medicine, because you might not even be a good doctor, And I'm just being honest. If you're not willing to put in the work and be the best at what you do, then by all means, become like do something else, right? All right. Just to end, we'll look through the chats. Can you share any 1 month plan to review first aid in UWorld subject wise? Yeah, do 2 blocks a day, subject based. Straight up. That's it. If you do UWorld, say you did cardio and you did 2 blocks and you annotate those notes into the first aid and you read the first aid and you do 1 chapter of pathoma every day at the end of your day, that's it. That's all. You got a 1 month plan right there. It takes about 30 days if you do 2 blocks a day of UWorld. So that's all. I don't really want to get into deeper detail. So hi. So you recommend pathoma and UWorld to study? Yeah, they call it UFAP. UWorld, first aid, pathoma. People got 260s using just those resources. Supplemental resources are good. If you have Anki decks, if you do like for micro, if you do sketchy, stuff like that, it's fine. But bare minimum, like, dude, trust me. Like, if I told you that Harvard students aren't even going to their lectures, they're doing UWorld and they're doing pathoma. Like, if you think you're too good for UWorld or pathoma, the exams are going to tell you they're too good for you, right? So definitely just if you're doing UFAP, master it, and then come back to me once you've mastered it. We'll go from there, right? Thank you. I really appreciate feedback. Yay! Well, I appreciate you guys. Got a lot of compassion for you guys. If you work hard, you will become a great healer and you will help people. And at the end of the day, if you're in this to help people, you're in the right profession because you will. All right, guys. I appreciate the time. Until next month. Take care. Stay med-inspired. And I'm going to end with a motivational video. If you don't already, follow Medspiration on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. We are always giving inspiring content. So here we're going to end with this video.
My most prized piece of knowledge and the thing that I'm most proud of is how I attack every day. I'm a big sports fan. I'm really into hard work and I'm really into, attack mode, having game face on. And probably the thing I love most about my studying was how I approached each day. And from day one of medicine all the way till now, I have the same philosophy is to master concepts, and concepts are probably the most important thing, especially for step 1 that you will encounter. I was so confident. I was taking NBMEs and I was getting 260s and high 250s on my NBMEs, and I was very confident. It doesn't matter. The day that I sat in that exam, I sat in that chair, my heart was racing. I was shaky, I was jittery, I was very nervous because I know this is going to reflect on my career for the rest of my life. I wanted to kill this exam. I wanted to be in that top 10% of the nation. So my focus was on where I knew everyone else focuses was away from. It's not really about how smart you are, but it is your work ethic and its determination and it's your mentality from day one that you set for yourself every day, so on forth, until you take that exam.
All right. Stay med-inspired, folks. Take care.